Welcome to Comptroller's Corner. I'm your host, Pat Curry, joined as always by Buffalo Comptroller Mark Schroeder. Our top story today, an audit of a home rehab program found that the city spends on average nearly $500,000 for each of the homes that it renovates. The total cost of this project was $5 million over the course of 2 years, and only 11 houses were renovated. The amount of money that you, the taxpayer, have invested in this are far more than what the houses are worth, often only a fraction of what was invested in this project. Now, Mark, you think for $5 million we should be able to renovate more than 11 houses over a 2-year period, and you think if the city spent this money more wisely, it could spread these funds so more people are affected and more people have higher quality housing than just maybe 11 houses.
Yeah, so there's no question the audit speaks for itself. I think there was an old Yogi Bear term a while ago, deja vu all over again, or it's Groundhog Day all over again. Patrick, 6 years ago, Kevin Kaufman, the city auditor, began to do these types of audits. This is not a new surprise to me. This has been going on for some time, and quite frankly, it's outrageous. $463,000 for one dwelling place is absolutely positively ridiculous. And so these are the types of things that need to stop. And these audits many times point it out clearly, and there are different solutions. The city of Buffalo has had a relationship somehow, some way with Habitat for Humanity. It would make sense to work with those types of organizations who have a success rate of getting things done in our neighborhoods. So this again is very, very disappointing. Some of the contractors, Patrick, who have taken advantage of this, they are becoming very, very wealthy, with this program.
Yes. Now, you mentioned the $463,000. That's just the average. Some of these projects were nearly $800,000, and you would think that, for that kind of money, you can get a mansion in Buffalo for that much. Yeah. And unfortunately, what we're left is that these are just, regular houses in regular Buffalo neighborhoods, and often they're worth even less than $100,000 after the city spends nearly $500,000 renovating them. Now, you wanted to get more answers on why are some of these costs in there, and why are these so expensive? And I just want to run through some of the reasons why some of these houses cost so much. Now, some of the houses include contingency costs. 6 out of the 11 have contingency costs. Now, these can range anywhere from $8,500 to $69,000.
The contractor changing the game.
Now, that's the contractor getting these contingency costs. Yeah. That's in addition to the contractor profit, which was in 4 projects. That can range anywhere from $26,000 to $43,000 per project. No rhyme or reason why some get contingency and some get contractor profits and some don't, but sometimes they get both, as one contractor did. Flooring, they're paying $9 per square foot. Appliances cost nearly $5,000. Now, if you go home, anyone who goes to their home counts all their appliances, I doubt they can come up with $5,000 worth.
Patrick, I'm an old salesman, and many, many years ago, there may be some of our viewers who remember Burnham's, and I sold appliances at Burnham's, and I can assure you that is outrageous to be almost $5,000 for 4 appliances or so. So that would be $1,000 or more per appliance, and that is just not right.
The list goes on and on and on. Unfortunately, there's a line called mirrors, blinds, and accessories. I could ask the viewer at home to think about how much they would buy mirrors, blinds, and accessories for, but the city of Buffalo is paying $4,600 for mirrors, blinds, and accessories. It goes on and on and on. Soft cost contingency average $5,000 per project. Developer fees average $11,000 per project. Broker fees were $4,000 per project. In addition to the broker fee, about $1,700 per project was spent on marketing. Now, it seems like everybody gets a sweetheart deal in this, these developers, these contractors, these brokers, everybody that is but the taxpayer.
Yeah.
And the people in the city of Buffalo that rely on affordable housing and aren't helped by a program that only affects 11 houses.
So the only thing that we can continue to do is to do these audits and point out what's happening by the policymakers. At some point in time, you think HUD would begin to review this process as well, because they are just as guilty, in my opinion, as the city of Buffalo for allowing this travesty to continue.
Now, other municipalities in New York State don't spend quite the amount that the city does, usually a fraction of what the city spends, maybe $100,000 per house. So when you hear all the excuses of why this program is so expensive and why they spend so much per house, it kind of rings hollow when you know that there's many other municipalities out there who are able to take advantage of this program and spend far less per house. So it might not be something out of the city's control why these cost so much. It just might be, there might be a better way to do this. And right now, the city's only doing it the way it seems to cost taxpayers the most. And really, all these contractors are the ones that seem to benefit the most.
Yeah, it's accountability, Patrick, and they have none. And so the only times is when we come up with these reports or audits to point out all of the flaws and the waste of taxpayer money. And so if they have the will to do better, they will. But they don't, and they haven't over the last 6 years that I've been the Buffalo City Comptroller.
So this is one of your audits that is you're going to look at in another year and just see where the city is. Are they still spending a $500,000 house? Are they still dropping $5 million over a 2-year period and only renovating less than a dozen houses?
Yeah.
Has anything improved? Are we getting answers on why there's some contractor profits and some aren't? Why contingency fees can be nearly $70,000 and other projects don't have that? You're going to look at all these questions that weren't answered by the administration in the first program and find those answers.
Exactly. This is just simply said more of the same. I can remember, I brought in the city auditor from the private sector and made him the city auditor in 2012. And I can remember him saying to me, muttering under his breath, it's outrageous the cost that he's seeing to do some of these projects. And so it continues onward. This has been going on for some time, Patrick, and I just don't have a good feeling that anything is really going to change going forward, even though we've done these reports. We furnished the Buffalo Common Council with these reports so that they know this is happening within the councilmatic districts, and it's just a tremendous amount of waste. It's wasting taxpayer money.
Now, these are federal funds that are being used, and a lot
taxpayer
of times
money.
Taxpayer dollars, and a lot of times you see the city will go to great lengths to save a buck here or there, sometimes in violation of federal and state law. But it seems because they're federal funds that the city doesn't really care as much about how much they spend on this, and they're willing to spend $500,000 on a single house 11 times over. But at the end of the day, when we're doing our taxes, we're all paying federal income taxes, and that money is getting wasted on these houses that, again, the investment is poor. I don't know any investment project where someone would want to invest $500,000 at the end of the day, get something worth less than $100,000.
So the real question that the citizens of Buffalo should be asking themselves is, where is the accountability? We've had a Democratic president, we've had a Republican president. It doesn't matter. The same thing continues to happen. It's a complete waste of federal money, which is generated by the taxpayers of our community. And until somebody, really listens or reads what we're saying and then puts it into practice, it's just going to continue. And it's really a shame.
And it might be something where, the city complains that, these things cost so much. And rather than complaining, you said, well, why don't you look at these other municipalities? Why don't you look at what the Rochester, Syracuse, Albanys of the world do? And how do they manage these funds? And how are they able to help more people? How are they able to spend less per project? Maybe it's time to look for ideas from elsewhere rather than complaining and making excuses about why these things cost too much.
No doubt. No doubt about it.
So I did want to talk about another audit that you did this year, and this was an audit that was required by the city charter. Now this is called a peer review audit. This is actually an audit of yourself, your own
Yep.
department.
Yep.
So the charter requires that you go out and find a third party to look at your auditing procedures and your auditing staff and just make sure everything is up to snuff. Now you do this every 2 years.
Right. Required by the charter.
Required by the charter.
Right.
And you found it's a good way to look and see how you're doing, and it's advantageous to have a set of outside eyes.
Yep.
Looking at your policies and procedures and your staff there. I just want to take a look
Yep.
at some of the highlights of
Sure,
this audit.
yeah.
Now you did an RFP, and you got a Motto Fox and Company to perform this audit. They had a great deal of experience and expertise, and they gave the city a great price compared to the other respondents to that RFP, and so we're able to save taxpayers $1 on this charter required audit. But I'd like to point out some highlights. It said that most of the prior recommendations have been implemented by the department.
Meaning that this has taken place before,
Right.
and the recommendations they gave us before we've implemented, and that is a sign of best practices. Patrick, when we do audits for different departments or entities of the city of Buffalo, we do the same thing. We give them recommendations, and we hope they implement. Sometimes they do, most times they don't.
But you have implemented the recommendations that this company has, just like you ask other departments to do around the city. The audit also found that your department staff are, quote, experienced, competent, and qualified professionals,
Yep.
which you know because you've been bringing in CPAs and other qualified individuals to run that department and lead the rank and file staff.
And the
there.
one thing that we have found is that when we have brought in certified public accountants, it strengthens the entire division, whether it's accounting or debt management, and in this particular case, audit. And it's something that we will continue to do.
And you've actually, by having the CPAs in place, had a few homegrown CPAs.
Yep, we have.
That were required to learn under CPA to get their CPA, and they've had that opportunity in your department. A couple other notes on this. The city auditor, Kevin Kaufman, quote, possessed the drive, energy level, and experience to direct internal audit process and modern departmental policies and procedures. So this is high praise for Kevin Kaufman, another one of the CPAs that you brought on.
That's right.
And he's done a good job as far as streamlining this audit process and getting the most out of the resources that we have. And one last thing I'd like to point out about this is they compliment the tone at the top from the controller, and that your tone has a great effect on the staff in the department. And it sets the tone really for everything your department does.
Yeah.
Right down from your mission statement to the vision statement.
Exactly.
That was that was developed by employees, and it's just your tone is to try to keep this department focused on what we should be doing, and that's protecting the city's taxes.
No doubt about it. And the tone at the top. The viewers know, because I've repeated this with you, Patrick, that when I first became the controller, we only had one certified public accountant. We now have 10. And so therefore, the tone at the top is that we want the most qualified and professional people. And also the other employees, as you mentioned, they have developed the vision statement and the mission statement. And these are all things because that means everybody's on the same program, everybody's on the same page, everybody understands that we have responsibility and that we have to have transparency. And so this is the reason why we're so grateful that we have people come in and they take a look at us. And when I became the controller in the beginning, the first thing I did was bring in UBTCIE to also do a review. Because if you have the responsibility to audit others, you better know what's happening within your own department.
And you're going to be doing this peer review audit again in another 2 years or even less now. So we got to take a brief break, Mark. When we come back, I want to talk about another audit we've talked about recently, one on seasonal employees.
Great, Patrick.
Stay tuned for more Controller's Corner after this message.
So what happened with Troy?
No, it's all about Jerome.
Hey, Dee. Hey, Julie, what's up?
So?
I was wondering if you could help me with that home ec project.
So what's the project? How to make white bread? Why doesn't she ask one of her other friends?
Yeah, why don't you just leave?
Sorry.
Why you gotta be like that? Julie.
Imagine the power of one voice. Find yours at freedomcenter.org.
Welcome back to Comptroller's Corner. An audit of benefit eligibility for seasonal employees found that the city of Buffalo is in violation of the Affordable Care Act, often known as Obamacare, and New York State retirement law as far as what benefits it offers, or in this case, doesn't offer to its employees. Now, Mark, since we talked about this last time, just to give the viewers a recap on this, it found that we're not offering seasonal employees, or there's no evidence that we have offered them the retirement pension membership that state law requires, and if they don't want that membership, they have to sign off and say they don't. We don't have proper documentation on that. I think about half of the documentation that we're looking for, it couldn't be located. And the second one I want to talk about is that we're what we call seasonal employees, but for definitions, by any other source, including the federal government, we have about 486 seasonal employees, or 396 seasonal employees. About 81 of those, the federal government says they're not seasonal. They work too many hours and they work too long year-round. Oftentimes, they work 12 months out of the year, work over 30 hours per week, and for some reason
they don't get the benefits.
They don't get the benefits, and that's a management decision. But the federal government says, hey, we consider these employees full-time employees. For all intents and purposes, they're full-time employees. You, as an employer, large-scale employer, the city of Buffalo, should be providing health insurance. The goal of the Affordable Care Act was make sure that everybody has health insurance. Now, the federal government says if you don't offer them health insurance, and we can prove it, and they get out and buy health insurance from the marketplace that's subsidized by the federal government, we can impose a penalty on you, the city of Buffalo, for not providing health insurance for its employees. So you did this audit. The Department of HR responded, and they're going to take some measures. But one measure they're not going to take is to actually offer health insurance to these full-time employees as required by the Affordable Care Act. And it's they have said in their response that they'd rather risk the penalty than actually providing this health insurance. Well, now this while it could there could be fiscal implications for this, but when you're paying a penalty, you're not getting anything in return. And when you're providing health insurance, you're not only providing your employees who, these employees are on the low end of the wage scale. So they're the ones who probably need insurance the most and can probably afford it the least. And they have the dignity of work, yet they're not being shown the same dignity by their employer. And, it could cost taxpayers money in the form of a penalty.
So what the administration, what they're actually doing here is they're rolling the dice on the 81 employees or so that are really eligible for these benefits. And so, Patrick, it seems to me that there's a loophole. The loophole is that the administration is taking the risk of paying the penalty. And at the end of the day, if that loophole is changed and the penalty is more severe, then that may be the only way to force the city to do the right thing and to do what the intent was of the Affordable Health Care Act in the first place. Because you're right, these are employees who have a responsibility to themselves and to their family, and they're being cheated. It's clear. They're being cheated. We did the audit. It's clear they're not getting what they deserve. what are they going to do? How are they going to stand up for themselves? If they stand up for themselves, they probably get fired. I am certain that these 81 probably aren't on the list that go to the mayor's fundraisers. If they were, they probably wouldn't be on this list. And so this is a problem. This is what happens. And so all we can do, again, is point certain things out. And for the administration to say, too bad, we'll take our risk. We know we're doing something wrong, but the penalty may never come to us. It's the wrong way to work the government. Wrong.
And I'm sure if you ask the mayor or the council members what is their stance on the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, they would probably say that they're for it. And, you know, if Donald Trump, which he has, President Trump, tried to do away with the program, the mayor was on record saying that he opposed that and that you know, it could lead to 3 million people in the state being out of insurance. And he thought that was a bad thing to have people not have insurance. But there's 81 employees he has direct control over that the federal government says, hey, you have to cover these people. You have to provide them insurance. And, you know, for all the talk about wanting to give people health insurance, he doesn't do it for the 81 employees that he has the direct responsibility to do so.
Yeah, and so Patrick, this is a decision that the policymakers are making. This is the mayor's decision and the Buffalo Common Council. All 9 of them are going along with this. If anybody thinks or suggests that this is just an HR situation and that they're just not doing it, they don't really have the control. The elected officials do. In this particular case, they're ignoring the law and they're doing just whatever they want to do, and it's wrong.
And also, it's something that can entice or hold over an employee's head, you know, in order to get something that they want out of that employee, as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
But you know, unfortunately, you know, we see this too often, where the city is in violation of these laws, and it's, you know, contradictory towards, you know, the public position that elected officials take in this this type of situation. You know, as far as minimum wage, I'm sure you know, the mayor and the council would say that they're for a $15 minimum wage across the board, but there are employees that we have direct control over in the city of Buffalo that are getting paid, you know, much less than that. So it's just one of those situations where words don't equal the actions. And
usually, you know, within city government, these employees are represented. There just seems to be a disconnect here for these so-called seasonal employees. And so, you know, the act is the act. They're supposed to be doing what we're saying in the audit. They're not doing it. And they say, too bad, we'll take our chances, because the only downside, Patrick, is a potential penalty. And so they get away with it.
Again, this is another audit that you've done that we'll look at in a year.
It's a repeated audit. I mean, it's a audit that we continue to do. Most of these audits that we've talked about this afternoon are audits that we do every 2 years or so, or whatever is required by the charter. And it doesn't seem like anything is really ever changing, and it's disappointing.
So unfortunately, when you look at this audit again in a year, you're not expecting that these 81 employees will be getting the health coverage that they're entitled to under federal law.
No, because they already gave their answer. They gave their answer, too bad. We'll wait and see if we get penalized. That's their answer.
That's disappointing, especially you know, when we talk about addressing poverty in the city. One of the main causes of poverty is medical bills. One of the main causes of bankruptcy is medical bills. Now, these are employees that don't earn a lot of money, but they're working, and they're working hard, and they're working a lot of hours. They're working year-round, and they're working over 30 hours a week. And these are people who are the most vulnerable. If we want to do something to address poverty in the city, maybe we do it for hard-working employees who show up to work every day and just want to provide the health insurance to their family and protect themselves.
The media doesn't pay attention to this either, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what the stigma is that these are employees who work for the city, so therefore we maybe want to treat them differently. But the media talks about those fast food workers who make X amount of dollars who are unable to pay for to their bills and their benefits and things of that nature, but it's happening right here, within the city of Buffalo, and has happened. And these are people who live in the city of Buffalo, who work for the city, and who have earned. They should be getting these benefits, and they don't get it. And there's nobody watching out for them except for this audit.
And unfortunately, they're just treated like second-class citizens.
Yep.
And then we wonder why. They say all boats should rise, but when we're not even treating all our employees the same way,
Yeah.
even ones that work the same hours, maybe there's some fault to the city there, rather than just blaming outside forces for
No doubt about it.
Not all boats rising. So,
No doubt about it, Patrick.
speaking of boats and floats, this weekend is the St. Patrick's Day parades. There's two of them.
There's two of them.
One in the old neighborhoods of
Yeah.
the Valley and
Yeah.
the Old First Ward, and the other on Delaware Avenue. You'll be at both.
Yeah.
You're not going to be Grand Marshal as you were last year.
It was great
in
honor.
the old neighborhood parade.
Great honor, yeah.
But you'll be there, and you'll be ready to march. And there's a new Grand Marshal. And
Yeah, Jimmy Sumbrum, he's just a great guy. He's a retired city worker, but more importantly than that, he has been a mentor to young kids in the old neighborhoods, especially in the Valley, in the Old First Ward, football coach, lacrosse coach, and he will be the honoree of the Grand Marshal of this parade, which is the Old First Ward Old Parade, which is the original parade. The original parade started in 1913. And Peggy Overdorf, the great executive director of the Valley Community Association, she brought this parade back approximately 25 years ago. She was honored just last weekend. I went to it, the Amherst Gaelic League. And they honored her because of everything she does, not only because she runs a parade, she runs two of the most pristine parks on the river, and she also runs a daycare center, she runs a senior center, she runs an after-school program, so she was honored. So it's going to be a great parade. And then I also went to several other events. The pastor of Cold Springs Bible Church, Kenny Simmons, he had his 50-year anniversary, of which I was the keynote speaker 2 years ago, so I went to that. There's a retiree of the city of Buffalo, Moe Oakley, who is just a tremendous person and has worked for a long, long time in the city of Buffalo, and she's already volunteering at Crisis Services in Erie County. So these are just great people who do so much for our neighborhoods and for the city of Buffalo. I ran in the Shamrock Run, a couple weeks ago, and that was a tremendous event that kind of starts St. Patrick's Month. So there's so many different things that are going on that are important to us and to the city of Buffalo. So I'm sure it's going to be a very, very busy month. And then the Dingus Day people are ready right after Easter. So it's great. We have ethnicity here, and we're so proud of it. And all of Buffalo gets involved in it.
Great, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thanks, Patrick.
That's all the time we got for this week's Comptroller's Corner. We hope to see you next time. But in the meantime, make sure to check out the city's website, our Twitter handle, our Facebook page, and our YouTube channel. On behalf of Mark Schroeder, this is Pat Curry, signing off.